Good day. We're standing here beside a Class A motorhome which has a double door Norcold refrigerator in it, 1200 model series. And we're about to show you how to get the refrigerator removed and repaired at your home. First thing you want to do is shut off your propane supply to your motorhome. Then you want to level up your motorhome reasonably well, get it as level as you can. Then you want to plug in a power supply to the motorhome, because you might want to run your AC in the motorhome while you do the job if it's very hot outside, and you'll have lights to work in there because the job is going to be done inside the motorhome. That fridge will not come out of the motorhome. So we're going to do those things, and then we're going to start and show you how to remove the fridge. Before we get started in our cooling unit removal and replacement, here are the tools we're going to require to do the job. First of all, we have a ball-peen hammer, a cordless drill, a can of penetrating fluid, a Phillips screwdriver or Phillips bit, a 5/16 bit, a curved screwdriver, a small pair of needle nose pliers, a small crescent wrench, side cutter pliers, needle nose pliers, a level, a putty knife, a X-Acto knife, a tube that comes with the cooling unit. It's the heat conductive thermal mastic. You'll have that with the unit. A 7-inch 2x4, a 4.5-inch 1x3, and a 4x4 steel plate of about a 1/4-inch thickness will be fine. A roll of electrical tape and a large crescent wrench, and of course a caulking gun from the thermal mastic. So with those tools on hand, that's everything that would be required to do a change out on a refrigerator. We're standing in a Class A motorhome, and we're about to remove a double-door Norcold 1200 refrigerator from its cabinet. This particular refrigerator has an ice maker in the freezer section. If yours has or has not got one, it doesn't matter. The procedures I show you will be the same. The first thing you have to do is, what I do is I take and I grab one of the crispers at the bottom of the refrigerator, and we're going to put all our parts in this crisper as we take them off the refrigerator. It's a good place to keep them. So, put this over here. Very simple to remove this refrigerator. You're going to notice at the top of the refrigerator, there's going to be 4 little black caps, similar to this one right here. You're going to take out all 4 black caps like this with a screwdriver, and underneath that black cap are your screws holding the fridge into the cabinet. There's 4 on top, and there's 4 at the bottom, identical to the top. There's black caps covering here, and 4 screws there. So we're going to take those caps off and remove those 4 screws, and that's all is required. Then the fridge will be able to slide out of the cabinet. Here we are with a Class A motorhome, and we're about to remove the refrigerator from the motorhome. It's a 1200 Norcold, and the first thing you want to do to remove the fridge, you're going to take this access panel out of the way and drop it out of your way, and you'll come to the back of your refrigerator. There's a few things you have to unhook here to make this possible. The first thing you're going to unhook is this water line. Right here, it goes to a water valve. You'll be unscrewing that and just putting it out of the way. This here is just a drip line. You're just going to take this water drip line and shove that out of the way. Very easy. Now, in here, you'll have your propane line screwed onto your gas valve. You're going to unscrew the propane line right here from the gas valve, and you're going to cap it off with a 3/8 cap and tuck that out of the way. The other thing, you'll have 2 12-volt wires going to the control box up in there. There'll be a negative and a positive. You're going to pull those 2 12-volt wires off. You're going to tape up your positive wire. In this case, it's red, and your negative can stand alone because there's no power to it. Hang them out of the way. Then you're going to pull out your two AC sources to the refrigerator from the plugs and tuck them out of the way because they're going out with the refrigerator. And then you're going to look at the base of the fridge and you're going to see some screws that hold the base of the fridge down to the floor of the motorhome. Look for those and remove the screws that may be in this plate. And that's all is required to remove the fridge. And then what you're going to do is take and give the fridge a good hard shove from the back. It might take one or two people. Give it a good hard shove from the back and get it started out into the motorhome, and then you go inside and we'll show you the inside process. You may also notice that some of these refrigerators will have a large bead of silicone up against the bottom plate of the fridge in the wood. If it's there, you have to cut that silicone so the fridge bottom comes loose from that silicone. Once you're convinced the fridge is loose and cut away, you're going to need 2 to 3 people to shove this fridge out into the living area. Now you're only going to give it a shove maybe 2 or 3 inches, but you'd get a second person, get a couple of good hands on it, and shove together 1, 2, 3, and there. See, we moved it about 2 to 3 inches, so you could always have a third person in the motorhome just making sure that the fridge doesn't go out too far and fall out of the cab. Okay, we've shoved the fridge from the back outside, and you can see how the fridge has now come out of the cabinet, 3 or 4 inches. That's wonderful. Then you're going to come down to the bottom of the fridge, and in this particular case, there's a little trim work, wooden trim work panel. I'm going to remove that little panel so that when we take the fridge out, there's no chance of scratching this wooden panel. And in this case, I'm just going to tuck it up underneath there, safe and sound. Now the fridge is ready to be taken out by 2 people. Okay, now we're ready to pull this fridge out of the cabinet. You're going to need a second person. It's quite heavy, and 2 people required. So I've got Timmy here to help me out. Now, with his assistance, we're going to pull the fridge out of the cabinet, and we're going to slowly bring it out. And then with the 2 of us, we're going to lift it out and set it standing upright here on the floor in the motorhome. Now Timmy and I are going to remove the fridge from the cabinet. I'm ready to go. Ready? Up, forward, there, and down. Okay, cut her off. There, yeah. Next step in the process, you're going to open up your freezer doors, and you're going to see some bolts, 5/16 torque bolts, inside the freezer back wall. You're going to remove those 8 bolts from the refrigerator by using, I use an electric drill with a 5/16 torque. Put it on there and just take them out of the fridge. They come out quite easily. After the bolts have been removed from both sides of the freezer, you're going to remove the shelving in the freezer, and that completes the top part section of the refrigerator, and you're going to close your doors up. And that completes the top part of the removal. The next step, we're going to open up the bottom section of the refrigerator. And you're going to see 7 bolts that hold the fin on the refrigerator. They're up in there. You're going to take your torque driver, 5/16 on your drill, and you're going to take all of those bolts out of that fin system. Putting in there, and remove those bolts. Okay. Now that these 7 bolts have been removed, you're going to remove the thermostat sensor clipped onto the fins by pulling it off, and I use a pair of needle nose to pull it off the fins. And just set that aside, let it hang there. You don't have to remove this shelving, it's all fine on its own. You may want to remove this 1 piece of glass that's in the fridge because you don't want it broken. And that's all. Now that all the hardware has been removed from the inside of the fridge, we're now ready to lay it down on its front. Make sure the doors are in the lock position. Make sure you have something on the floor not to let your doors get scratched up in the front. So now we're going to lay it down on its face.
Now that the fridge is on its face, we are ready to remove the cooling unit. Step 1 will be to remove this bottom pedestal here, which is a 1/4" nut driver. Take these screws off all around the bottom of it, and sometimes they may have duct tape around here, which they do. So what I recommend doing is just taking a knife and cutting all around the bottom of it, just like so. That way there it's easier to come off. Now that you have removed the pedestal on the bottom of the fridge, we're going to remove the wires that may be in the way of taking the cooling unit out. If you have a digital camera, maybe take a picture of all the wires so you can go back and look at the wiring if there's any confusion. First off, we'll start by taking the sparker probe wire, which goes to the board. Sometimes it may be a little stiff, but it'll come. Next, I'm going to take the ground and the positive wire off of the water valve. And then also over here on the stack there's a heat snap disc. We're going to remove them wires. Sometimes they're a pain. Alright, maybe you can use a pair of nose pliers here to give you a little better grip on it. There we go. There's one. Okay, in this case the snap disc just come right off, so we'll just leave that there for now, and then we'll get back to that whenever we install the other cooling unit. These wires here are also going to have to come underneath here because they're all mangled in with the gas line. And also there's a water line here on the bottom of the valve that'll have to be removed because you can see it goes through the loop of the bottom of the boiler on the cooling unit. So we'll just take that off, and then there's two wires that come off of that. We got to unhook those also. Right here and right here. Now that this is done, you'll be able to remove the cooling unit. Now that those wires have been disconnected, we're going to come over here and we're going to take the 110 wire off. And then after the 110 wire is off, we're going to take the 4 bolts that are in the corner of the board cover. We're going to take them off. And once we get them off, we're going to come inside the board here. Just lift the cover off. Be gentle because we do not want to replace the board. And inside the board here you have your 4 heating element wires, 2 yellow and 2 black. You're going to have to remove those because when you pull the cooling unit out of the fridge, the heating elements are still going to be in the heating element holders on the boiler, and it just makes it for an easier job to do it this way. Now that the heating element wires have been disconnected from the board, we're just going to gently pull them through here to the other side of the cooling unit so they're out of the way. Sometimes they may get snagged up or they may not. And now you can just let them hang on the side of the fridge out of the way, and you can move on to the next step. Now you'll be able to remove the gas line, and by doing so you want to put an adjustable on the gas valve itself, and then also one on the nut. You want to be very gentle with this line because it's fragile and it may be C-shut. Don't be shy to use a little bit of penetrating fluid just in case it is C-shut. In this case, we didn't need any penetrating fluid. It is not C-shut. So once you got that off, you can move it out of the way and you're good to go. The next step is to remove these 2 5/16 bolts in behind the absorber coils that holds your cooling unit in place on the bottom. By doing so, we use a 5/16 nut driver. Now we move to the top of the cooling unit, where there is also 2 5/16 nuts that holds the cooling unit condenser in place. We'll remove those with the same thing, a 5/16 nut driver. Now that we're at the top of the condenser, you can also remove these two wires that are on the snap disc. Some people call it a snap disc. It's also called a thermal disc. You may need a pair of needle nose pliers to remove those also. The next step is to remove your water line for your ice maker. Just using a flathead screwdriver, just unloosen that hose clamp right there and just pull the water line right out just like that. The next step, you'll want to take a 1/4 inch nut driver and remove your fan brackets off the back of the cooling unit. You'll have to not replace, but you will have to mount these back on the new cooling unit. Now you can remove the wiring harness from the back of the cooling unit, starting by the down at the bottom here. You just take a pair of side cutters and cut that zip tie. That allows that to come free. Then up top there's another zip tie here which has a 1/4 inch nut screw on it. Just take your nut driver and remove that. Two very important things to remember. One being that your heating elements have to come out because you will need them in the new cooling system that you will get. Also up top here you have a vent cap on the baffle. On the flue, sorry, you got to remove this screw, 1/4 inch screw. Once you're done that, you got to take this vent cap off the top of the flue, just like so. And inside of here, there's a baffle. You may need or may not need a pair of needle nose pliers. It makes it a little easier if you got a pair of needle nose pliers. Just to grab it and kind of put it on an angle. Put it on an angle here, and then it comes out of the hole. There's a hole there that it's in. Just like so, and then you just pull that out of there, and be sure to put that back into your new cooling system because it will not work correctly without. The final step before taking the cooling unit out, there's a duct tape all around the side of this cooling unit. You will have to cut that freely down one side. You're going to have to go across the bottom, move over to the other side here, come up that side, and then right across the top here. So all around the evaporator head basically you will have to cut the tape through here. Now we're ready to remove the cooling system. You will need two people to help do this. You just grab it right here by lifting there, and on the flue you can pull it out. And once you get it out of the hole, you just pull it out towards you on the right side. Let it go, Chris.
Okay, there we go. Okay. There we are.
And there you have the cooling system out of the fridge. Now that the cooling unit is out of the fridge box, take a couple minutes and just get rid of all this leftover Maztec that may be laying around in here. Just take a putty knife and go along your edges and just simply put it in a garbage bag. And also on these plates in the freezer, you want to get all that stuff off of there. And also down here on these fins in the fridge, just remove it, and as you're taking it off, just put it in a garbage bag or whatnot, because later on when we install the new cooling unit, we would put in new Maztec on. You also want to get all these little chunks out of here in the crevices, so that way there, when you do set the new cooling unit in, there's no obstructions to how good it's going to sit in there. Now I have cleaned the bulk of the Maztec up. As you can see right here, I got a pile of it. Just take this stuff here, which is not harmful to the hands. You can touch it with your bare skin, it will not affect you. Also too, when you're doing this, you also want to look for chunks of foam that may have come off the head of the old cooling unit. Plus, anything else that might be in the way, any obstructions, just take it out and put it in a garbage bag, say. It's not going to be squeaky clean, but you want to do your best to get the majority of it. The next step, we'll remove the burner box from the old cooling unit just by removing this 1/4 inch nut screw here. You can take this burner box off, just bring it around back, and then take that, set it over here for now. And then there are also the second part of the burner box. There's two 1/4 inch screws in the back of the burner box itself. You take them off. Once those two screws have been removed, the box will come off just like so. Next step, we're going to take the burner out of the burner box. Just Phillips screw right there, as you can see. Once that's off, this here will just slide right out like so. And then we're also going to remove the thermocouple slash sparker out of the burner box. As you can see, it's very rusty. It may take some penetrating fluid or some heat to remove these Phillips screws. Now we're ready to remove the heating elements. All you will need is a box cutter or an Olfa knife like so, and just cut down the heating element, the insulation on the stack. Don't worry about damaging this insulation because the new unit that you purchase will come with a new stack and insulation on it. Just cut this stuff all around here. And occasionally these heating elements will be seized in there from being heated up and cooled down over time. Try to get them out, but if they're seized in there, don't try too hard because you will break them. Just get a little bit of penetrating fluid and generously apply it to the top of them and let it set over time, and they will work freely. As luck would have it, our heating elements are seized in the heating element holders over time from being heated up. So we're going to remove this stack bottom here with a 1/4 inch nut driver. There's a screw underneath. You just loosen that out and it comes off. By doing so, that will allow you to get to the top of these where you could put more penetrating fluid into them, and then you can just let that set over time and they will work themselves freely. These heating elements were really seized in here, so what we done was we put more penetrating fluid on it and let it set overnight. Now by doing so, we're going to take a rod and a hammer and we're going to put it in there, and we're just going to tap down on this heating element very gently. As you can see, they're coming down a little bit, and by doing, if you keep on hitting them, they will eventually come free. As you can see by all the corrosion on the heating element holders, that these were really stuck in there. So what we done was we put penetrating fluid on it overnight and let set. So by gently just tapping it from the top, it will free this heating element, so you can twist it like so. You may need to take a pair of pliers and twist it like this by pulling down on it and twisting it just like so. And I mean, it's not going to be easy. Like so. Like I said, it will not be easy, but you will get it over time. Just like so. As you can see by the element holders here, they're very corroded away and rusted. So what we done was we put a generous amount of penetrating fluid on it and let it set overnight. And by doing so, whenever you're done, you can just take the rod here, set it down in there, and just give it a couple of generous taps, freeing it up, and then you can just take this and pull the heating element out. Just like that. Now we're going to remove the thermal disc on the side of the condenser. It's just 2 Phillips screws right here. And I'd like to mention that this thermal disc is what controls the fans that we had took off earlier.
Here's some basic maintenance you want to do on your burner that goes to your fridge before you put it back into the new cooling system. You want to remove the line from the burner. Then you'll see at the end of the burner there's a brass fitting. That unscrews from the burner, like so. And on the end of that brass fitting is called the orifice. Now, do not remove this shiny orifice away from this brass fitting on this style of orifice. Just take this whole thing, soak it in alcohol for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then blow it out with your mouth, making sure that it's clean. Also, take this burner, clean up the slots. I use a wire brush wheel on a drill, clean those slots up, blow out this burner, make sure there's no debris left in that. When that and this is clean, you can put it back together and put your line back on it and reinstall it into your cooling system. Now, you may have what's called the old style orifice in your fridge, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. The old style orifice will look like this. Here is an old style orifice. It's separate from the brass fitting. It will drop into the burner. Your line will go in there with a small little copper washer to hold it in place. That's the old style. If you had the old style, remove the orifice, clean this with alcohol, and replace it back into the burner after you clean the burner as well.
We're now going to prep your new aftermarket Norcold cooling unit with the parts off the OEM unit, such as the burner, the sparker probe, and the baffle. We're first going to start off with the burner. You just slide it into the hole here, into that slot, and you take the Phillips head screw that come out of it, and just line it up with the hole, screw it in place, just like so. The next step, we're going to install the sparker probe slash thermocouple. In there like so. Take the screw, the hole, screw it there like that. We are now going to put the cooling unit right side up so we can put the heating elements in it and the baffle and the flue. Next step, we'll put the thermal disc on the side of the condenser right here. Just like so. Now we're going to install the two heating elements. By doing so, we just got to take this door off the stack. You can slide it up and simply remove it just like so. And then you can just take your heating elements. Inside here there's two little pipes. Slide one into that one. Slide this one into the other one. And then after you have them in there, you're going to have to stagger them like so. And then just make sure that they go all the way. Turn them all the way to the back of the cooling system. Like that. And you take your door, put it on. And once you got them in there, you take your door and just shut it like that. The next step is to install the baffle into the flue. This is a very important step, and if you do not do this, your cooling unit will not work properly. By doing so, you just want to slide it down in there, and there's a hole in the back of the flue. You just take your clip, put it in like that, and then there, it's in. And we also have a vent cap which goes over the top of the cooling unit, and it goes over top just like this. Now we're going to install the burner box onto the new unit. You just set it in place like so, and there's two screws on the inside of the burner box here that we're going to put in that are supplied with the unit. We are now going to prep your new unit for installation in the fridge. And by doing so, we're going to take the 6 parts from your old fridge cooling unit to the new one. They are as follows: the snap disc, the baffle, the heating elements, the burner, the sparker probe, and the burner box.
We're back in the motorhome with your refrigerator on the floor here. We're going to prepare to put the cooling unit into the fridge. The first thing you're going to have to do, because of our cooling unit, you're going to have to cut these 4 wires right here. Leave yourself room to splice them back together. So I'm going to cut 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because I want to be able to take this whole wiring harness and get it out of our way down here. Much easier doing that than unhooking all the wires. Now we've got the room to slip our new cooling unit into the refrigerator. With a friend, bring up the cooling unit and lay it on the top of the fridge, because you have to Maztec the cooling unit prior to installation. You're going to take the Maztec, which is supplied with the cooling unit, which is here. We use a caulking gun for this process. You're going to take the caulking gun and you're going to put an ample supply of Maztec caulking on the pipework of the cooling unit, like I am doing now. A bead of it all along the pipe. Cover your pipes with the Maztec. Nice rich bead of Maztec, like I'm doing. This is a conductive putty which transfers the cold from the pipes to the inside of the fridge. Okay. Now we've Maztec the cooling unit. We have a nice 3/8 bead on the pipe. Of Maztec, you don't have to use the whole tube, just cover the pipe work. And we're now ready to flip this cooling unit over and install it into the refrigerator. We pulled the water tube through the unit, and we're now setting the unit down into the refrigerator. And it will sit right down in there, nice and... Now you'll see that the cooling unit, there may be the backing paper that will go beyond the edge of the fridge. Don't worry about that, that's normal. Just have it sitting down there nice and flush.
Now we're ready to hook the water line back up to the ice maker. As you can see, we ran the water line through the absorber coils. Just make sure that it's under all the piping so that it's not in any way in anything. Come up here, and then there's a fitting in here that it goes in that we had before. Just slide it in there, just like so. And there's a little hose clamp in there. You're going to need somebody to hold the condenser up for you while screwing the hose clamp on. Next step, we'll take the water line and hook it onto the bottom of the water valve. There's just a little fitting here you screw it onto. Just screwing it on finger tight should be good. Just like so, and then that's it. Next step, I'm going to take the heating element wires that we took off earlier from the board, and we're going to put them back on to the board the way they were. Just like so. Now we'll take this wire harness from the board on the front of the fridge and the fans, and we're going to run it through the absorber coils here, up to the top, just like so. And we're going to connect these wires to the wires that we spliced into earlier with these solderless connectors.
These solderless connectors I'm using, they're very easy to use. You just bare back the wire by about a 3/8 of an inch, slip the fitting, the connector over the wire. These are called crimping pliers. They're made to crimp with. You put the crimping plier over the fitting and squeeze it tightly onto the wire. Then you have a good connection from this wire when I plug it into the other wire. Very easy to use.
Now that we have mounted the fans with the screws into the bracket, we're going to hook up our positives and negative wires to the fans, just like so. And you want to take these wires and tuck them back into this tubing. Maybe you want to get a zip tie or two and just kind of tidy up these little fan wires also while you're here, just to catch them from getting caught in the fan or anything. If there's any of the access blowback hanging over the edge, you can just take your X-Acto knife here, like this. Cut it all off, and then what we will do is we'll take foil tape and come all around the edges with it after a bit. Now we're going to screw the unit to the back of the fridge. There's a hole here in the bracket, and then there's a hole over here on the bracket, and then there's two holes down here in behind the absorber coil where we're going to screw it in. I'll start up here with this one. Right there. There. Right there. We're now going to hook up the wire. Water's going to the wire valve, which we had marked prior to unhooking them, 1 and 1. Just go into each other like that. And we have 2 and 2 right here, which is the ground for the water valve. Just like that. Now we're going to hook the 2 water valve pump wires up. One goes on the bottom just like so, and the other one goes here just like that.
You can take the thermal disc that you removed from the other refrigerator and you can mount it here in the bottom lower section of the stack. It's designed so if the cooling unit overheats, shuts the fridge off. I take 2 self-tapping screws and I screw it into the sheet metal of the stack. You can take the thermal disc that you removed from the other refrigerator and you can mount it here in the bottom lower section of the stack. It's designed so if the cooling unit overheats, shuts the fridge off. I take 2 self-tapping screws and I screw it into the sheet metal of the stack.
Now we're going to put the gas line onto the gas valve. You just want to put it on there starting off with your fingers like so. And then take your 2 crescent wrenches, put one on the valve and then one onto the flared nut itself, tightening it just snug. Also a reminder, you're going to check for any leaks once you do get it in there and you get the propane hooked up to the line. Now we're going to take and tighten the gas line on the burner just with 2 crescent wrenches. Snug it up like so. And like the other lines, we're going to check for leaks once we get the propane hooked up to it. Now we have all the other wires tied up. We're going to put the board cover over top of the board. So, and then we'll screw it down Now that the board cover has been put back on, we can hook up our 110 plug outlet here, and then we can take our sparker probe wire and hook it into the sparker box, just like that.
A lot of times you have a lot of wires laying around here. Tie wrap them up, bundle them up, get them tied up so they're not vibrating or jumping all over the place. So just use plastic tie wraps to do that. It just makes the job neater, gets them out of your way. They can be just tie wrapped against anything at all. None of these pipes get hot enough over here to bother anything. When we finish up the job, we take some foil tape and we tape up the edge of the backing to the fridge. Now, it can be foil tape or it can be duct tape, gray duct tape. It doesn't affect the operation of the fridge. It's just for the aesthetics. So we just put it on there like so and run the tape down the side of the fridge, taping the extra to the side of the fridge. It's for aesthetics only. Doesn't change the operation.
Now we're going to install the pedestal on the bottom of the fridge that we had taken off at the first. We're using the 1 1/4 inch nut driver. So we'll put the screws in there like so.
Okay, we completed installing the cooling unit. We're ready to stand it up and get this fridge ready to go into the cabinet where it belongs. Alright. Yes, you do this.
Now that we have stood the fridge up, we're going to open the doors, and inside the fridge here you're going to have your screw holes. We've got these 2.5 inch self-tapper screws and 1 inch washers that are supplied with the fridge. They go into here. You just screw them into the back of the fridge like so. There's 4 on each side of the freezer, of a total of 8 up top. Now that we have the 8 screws in the top of the freezer, we're all ready to go down to the bottom and put the screws in the bottom. So we'll just open the doors up here. Down here, we'll just start putting them in. Like so. Now that we have taken and put all the screws in our fins, we'll put the thermostat back in its proper place.
Second fin in.
Just like so. And then we will also take this glass that we had taken out earlier and have it put back in. Just like that.
Okay, the key to installing the fridge back into the cabinet is several things. You don't want the footing of the fridge here to scratch up the cabinetry. So by doing this, if you tilt the fridge forward, okay Tim, tilt the fridge forward, have a friend with you, and we're going to lift and put the bottom of the fridge up first. So go Tim, just go easy, up. Now, okay, forward Tim, a little bit on your edge. There, good. Now, holding it there, tilt it upwards from the top, and there. And holding it, start walking it into the cabinet area. It's going to be wiggled side to side. It's sometimes, if it gets one way too much or the other, it doesn't want to go. Right. Just finesse that thing in there. Now, you're going to get the fridge in the cabinet 3/4 of the way, because then you have to stop and check the outside fittings. So now guys, probably the last thing you're going to do now is you want to bring your fridge back out into your motor home or your trailer. Once you bring it back and you get it installed in the hole of the trailer and motor home and get your fascia screws all back in place and bolted down, you'll come to the back of the fridge outside the motor home, and you've got your two 12-volt wires that have to go into your block here. Make sure you get the polarity right. Make sure you've got negative where the negative goes, positive where the positive goes. They're usually marked on this little plate. When you have the live positive wire in your hand from your motorhome or trailer, don't touch a piece of metal with that wire, because if you did, it'll blow a fuse in the trailer or motorhome, and you'll have to go and replace that fuse if you've blown it. So when you've got your live wire, hooking it back to your fridge, be careful to not short it out against a pipe or a wire. Then, when you reinstall your propane line, make sure that you get that on straight and you're able to thread it on by hand so you know you're not cross-threading this fitting. And then make sure you use your adjustable wrenches, snug it down good and tight, and make sure you soap up that joint with the propane on, looking for any bubbles. And if you see any bubbles, that means a leak. So always check this fitting area with soapy water that you have no propane leaks. And then light up your fridge and enjoy the new fridge performance you have.